Thank you so much, Greg. And yes, really excited to be here today. I think everybody at Generation Citizen is really excited about what's happening with the Civic Readiness Initiative, and we're excited to be able to connect with you all today to speak a little bit more, a little bit more about the initiative itself, but then also to elevate some resources that we have that may be helpful. In addition to just kind of digging a little bit deeper into what this could mean for you and your school community. So I think with that, I will share my screen. I have a couple links that I'll also share out at the end of the session. So I will start off with the presentation. So hopefully everybody can see that. But yes, so like Greg was saying, really a big focus for us today is to really think about that term civic readiness. The New York State, they've been focusing around what that means for quite some time, and so have we as an organization. So really excited to see how the state is starting to think about civic readiness, not just as a graduation requirement, but as something that is embedded into all K through 12 aspects of education. So today we're really going to be exploring the civic readiness recommendations, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the seal of civic readiness and just in general action civics with Generation Citizen. And Greg did already introduce me, but just to share my email, I guess, as well. So my name is Martin Mintz. I'm the program manager for Generation Citizen New York. So in my role, I work with teachers and school communities and administrators who are interested in implementing our Action Civics programming inside their schools. So I'm here as a resource. I work, we have partnered with through Northern Westchester BOCES, and then also partner with other schools just individually, but really excited to be here, both as a representative of Action Civics, but also to be able to share with you, some of the things that we know about civics education, effective civics education, and how to really engage young people around such an important topic. So I've introduced myself, just want to do a quick introduction of actually Generation Citizen as well. So we're a national nonprofit, and really our goal is to work to transform civics education so that young people are both equipped and inspired to exercise their civic power. We see this as something that is embedded in the culture of a school community, of a district, and so a lot of the work that we do is, yes, built around implementation of curriculum inside of a classroom, but also goes much deeper than that. So we work with middle schools and high schools and also school districts with that goal of ensuring that every student in the United States is receiving an effective action civics education, which provides them with the knowledge and skills necessary to participate as active citizens. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to share some information around the Civic Readiness Initiative and really explore a little bit about its potential for school communities. We're also going to do a little bit of a dive into Generation Citizen's Action Civics pedagogy and how it could potentially connect with the Civic Readiness Initiative. And then we'll end the day with sharing some strategies and resources to help foster civic engagement for you as educators and for your school communities as well. And we'll also have time for some questions and answering at the end of the program. So before we jump in, I have just, a couple just thought questions to get us started. 3 questions that are just up on the screen. Would love in the chat for you to spend some time reflecting on one of these questions, and would love you to just, type in your response, in addition to the number you're responding to. So if you're answering question 1, just type 1 and then your response, and then so on and so forth. But yeah, just choose one of these questions, and would love, just to start sharing some ideas. One being, how would you describe the state of civic engagement in your community, larger community? Second one is more about your how you would describe the state of your students' civic engagement. And then 3 is, what resources or tools do you feel you might need to support your students' civic engagement? So yeah, take a minute or so, reflect on one of these questions. I would love to see some thoughts in the chat, and then we can kind of take it from there. All right, so starting to see some responses come in. In terms of describing their student civic engagement, seeing students are very engaged in their community, relatively speaking, looking for ways to further the engagement, strong interest in civic engagement. They want to make a difference and help others. Students are very interested in social justice and environmental issues. So I'm seeing a lot of interest, which is really great to see. Dawn said, my middle school students have a desire to be engaged, but do not know how to be. That's one we definitely see a lot. Strong and supportive community involvement. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot of great information and thoughts into kind of where students are. So it's definitely something that resonates with a lot of what I've heard about from our teachers as well, about students being interested. They want to make a difference in their communities and their schools and their lives. And yeah, I think Amanda's also kind of highlighting this as well. They're interested in that. They maybe they know how to do it. But it's a little bit more focused on, how do I apply those skills, or what tools do I need to take on specific actions, or how do I navigate local government, or things like that. But that's definitely something that everything that you've mentioned is definitely something that resonates with our schools and our partners as well. It's a lot about change, or making those connections between interest and engagement. And connecting students to tools and opportunities to actually be able to take that on. So yeah, I think just to highlight a little bit about Generation Citizen and how we're coming to this. So Generation Citizen is really working around with that focus around civic engagement and addressing the civic engagement gap. As I'm sure many of you are well aware, New York has a state mandated participation in government class, which is it aims to engage students in that political process. But we really believe that there's so much more that can be done to prioritize civics education in schools. And also to further develop the learning standards that don't just focus on a half-credit course in high school, but go much deeper than that. And that's one thing that we're really excited about with the Civic Readiness Initiative, is that it digs a little bit deeper and focuses a lot on how can we look at civic engagement from a K-12 lens. So this session, we're really going to think about exploring the steps that both New York on the state level is taking to address these issues and inequities that we're seeing in civics education, with the main goal that all students are leaving with having attained civic readiness. And then again, like I mentioned, we will then explore Generation Citizen's action civics pedagogy and think specifically about how that approach can support this. So just to jump into a little bit of the timeline around the Civic Readiness Initiative, and I'll give you a heads up, all this information is available on NYSED's website. I'll give you the link to where all this information is. So you can also, reflect back into it and look over it at the end of the session. I'll drop the link into the chat. But just to do a quick overview of civic readiness, in January of 2020, so a little over a year ago, the Civic Readiness Task Force shared their recommendations. Oh, thank you, Greg, for dropping that link in. Perfect. And their recommendations really focused on 3 specific buckets. One was they had created, or to create, a state definition of civic readiness. So making sure, we're all on the same page when it say, what does civic readiness actually mean? The creation of a state seal of civic readiness, and also the creation of a civic capstone project, one for middle school and then one for high school. The next steps for this initiative, so January 2020, as I'm sure you're very well aware, March 2020 threw us all a curveball. And so initially, the idea was that this would be piloted in the 2020-2021 school year. That pilot program has been pushed back a year, just due to everything with going around with COVID. So the pilot program is actually going to occur next year in the school year 21 to 22, and then with the following year being rolled out to all schools and districts to opt into offering this. Yeah, so to go to the first thing that the Civic Readiness Task Force recommended was a state definition. And this is the definition that we have. Civic readiness is the ability to make a positive difference in the public life of our communities through the combination of civic knowledge, skills and actions, mindsets, and experiences. And one thing that I really want to focus on in the next is really those 4 buckets, right? Civic knowledge, civic skills and actions, civic mindsets, and civic experiences. Because I think that's something that no matter what grade level you teach, these can be really applicable to you and your students. So these are the 4 civic readiness domains. It's something that is very much aligned with the work at Generation Citizen. We actually measure civic growth in a very similar way. But there's civic knowledge, which, focuses more on your understanding of how these systems work. Civic skills and actions, it focuses more on maybe a little bit more of like those soft skills, communicating with verbally, talking with people who you might not necessarily agree with. Media literacy is another huge one. There's also civic mindset. So how do you as an individual look at your own role as a civic participant? Do you see yourself as someone who not only has the ability, but the responsibility to be civically involved? And then there's the actual civic experiences. So how are students actually engaging in their communities as active participants? And for us at Generation Citizen, we think about this on the middle school and high school level, because that's where we are, certainly, that's where we focus on in terms of our curriculum. But something that is, I guess, to put on your radar, all of these domains are going to frame how civic readiness looks on the K-12 spectrum, and there will definitely be more and more guidance and information on that from the state level. But I think just looking at these 4 buckets, I think it's something that you can think about. As somebody that's in 1st grade and someone that's in 12th grade can still engage in these different domains. The next recommendation was the seal of civic readiness. And this is a state seal, similar to maybe the seal of biliteracy. Students can earn this by through a menu of options that reflect both civic knowledge and civic experiences. This can be used as a +1 pathway or a standalone seal. And again, it really affirms NYSED's commitment to strengthening civics education. And what this also does, by having that seal, incentivizes both districts and students to participate in meaningful civic engagement projects beyond what is just required in the curriculum. So this is a very large chart that really does a deeper dive into the menu of options that how students could receive a seal of civic readiness. So there are so many different ways that it can happen, but I'll try to make this as simple as possible. And once again, this is all also on the website, the NYS website. So it says it up at the top, but basically students have to earn a total of 6 points. At least 2 of the points need to come from the first column, so the civic knowledge column. The second column, civic participation, there also needs to be at least 2 points from that. So you'll see on the left side, it's a lot of course requirements, whether that's taking all of your global history, government classes, that's 1 point. You have, passing a regents exam, either on a mastery level or proficiency level. And you'll also see the points that have a star next to them, you can get them multiple times. So if you take the US history regents and the global, and you get proficient on both of those, that's 2 total points. In addition to, taking all of your social studies courses, that's another point. And then for civic participation, these are more reflective about experiences. And you'll see down here, there's a lot of them either have connections to elective courses or community service, and with a civic learning essay. What we'll focus on today is really what our main wheelhouse in Generation Citizen is, which is the Capstone project. You'll see the middle school Capstone project has a star next to it. So that actually could be done more than once on the middle school level. And then the high school Capstone project. So the middle school Capstone project is very, very similar, mirrors the high school Capstone in goals. And just for purposes of today, we'll focus a little bit more on just in terms of framing the high school Capstone, but that information is still definitely relevant to you all, even if you're not in the high school, because the Capstone itself can be certainly applied to high school. And again, we have some information around this guidance, but there definitely is going to be later this spring going to be more guidance documents coming from the state level to share a little bit more about like the Capstone committees and things like that. And you'll see in the for example, in the middle school Capstone project section, it says that students will need to present the overall project to the middle school Capstone committee. So for example, information on what does that mean and how is that developed. But yeah, so today we'll just, just as an example, if you look right here, if a student completes their social studies courses, takes a regents exam and passes it at the proficiency level, and then completes a high school Capstone, that is one way of achieving this seal, because that way it's 1, 2 points plus 4, that's 6, and they have at least 2 points in each column. So just one example. There's literally thousands of ways I'm sure you could go out about and do this. So won't dive into the different ways that it can happen, but just for the purposes of this, we'll focus on the high school Capstone. So again, just to think about this Capstone project, really students go through a process that I'm going to breeze over it a little bit right now, because I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the process when I talk a little bit more about Generation Citizen. But in a Capstone project, students work to identify an issue facing them or their school or their community, analyze that issue, and take informed action to address the issue and create some sort of positive change in their community. And then presenting that project to the school's Civic Readiness Committee. So I went over that really briefly because the next section I'll focus on really does a deep dive into action civics, which is, that's really Generation Citizens' the heart of our work. So action civics is a hands-on experiential approach to civics education. So young people are learning about democracy by actively working to address issues in their own communities. So at Generation Citizen, we train teachers and provide ongoing support to help them implement this work inside of their own classrooms. Beyond that, we advocate for policy solutions that really address, civics education on the larger scale. And then that was something that thinking about the New York State on the New York State level is something that we were definitely really excited about. So just for the sake of time, I think I'm going to skip over this lesson or this slide to really think about what is action civics and how does it differ from potentially a community service project, for example. So this, I know we're kind of framing this all under the umbrella of a capstone project, but this is something that I think is certainly applicable to all the educators thinking about how to make real civics education happen in their classrooms. So, for example, if a class is focusing on taking action on a dangerous street crossing in their neighborhood, community service might involve volunteering to serve as a crossing guard, to put time to help people experiencing a problem. What Action Civics does is it really helps students look at the problem on a systemic level, analyze it, think about the ways, not only what's happening, but why is it happening. So it really requires students to think about government structures, think about the budget process, think about decision makers and who holds the power. And an Action Civics project itself might look like actually working with the Department of Transportation, asking them to, put some sort of system, whether that's, a crosswalk or a stop sign or whatever the case may be, to address, a dangerous intersection. And so these are really the steps of the Action Civics hourglass. Students go through a process of identifying community concerns, narrowing and building consensus around one focus issue. They research the systemic nature of the problem to land on a specific goal, so what they actually want to advocate for. And then during the rest of the semester, they actually take action. So they don't only just talk about it, but they actually are implementing their actions. And this is just I think these are some examples from over the past 2 years, some of the topics that some students have focused on. So you could see it really goes from things as school-based as school lunch or the bell schedule, but it could also be as large and systemic as immigration or homelessness or bullying. So I think one thing that it's exciting about this work, it can also be a little bit intimidating, is you don't know where exactly students are going to go with this project. So one thing that we really focus on is being able to support teachers as they navigate all of that. I know we're running short on time. I want to make sure we have time for questions afterwards, but yeah, just to share some quick project example, a class might focus on environmental sustainability and end up advocating for solar panels on their school. They could focus on the fact that some electronics in their school are broken, so they might advocate for the school budget to be allocating to replacement smart boards or something like that. And I'll circle back to, we started thinking about civic learning goals and the four civic domains that NYS has presented, and it really is reflected in how Generation Citizen is thinking about our work as well. So civic knowledge, civic skills, and civic beliefs. So it's the combination of those three. And then we only have a few more minutes left, so I'll briefly go over just some resources that could be useful, and then want to make sure that I open up at least a minute or two for some questions. So I'll drop the links for these into the chat, but just want to make sure you're aware. We have three things that really I want to share with you. Certainly our Action Civics curriculum, which is the work that we do working with schools and with districts to implement the Action Civics experience that I quickly ran through today. Additionally, we have something called Kickstart Action Civics, which is a self-guided set of modules to really help educators who are interested in taking those first steps to teaching action civics, you'll really build an understanding of, what is action civics and what could it mean for your students. So that's a really great resource I would want to elevate to you as well. It's free and it's self-guided, so you can take it at whatever pace you want. And then the third is just a set of resources called Beyond the Ballot. And Beyond the Ballot focuses more around a few things. There's registering to vote, which we know is available for either pre-registration or registration, but also a bunch of resources that are more one-off lessons that can really help both educators and caregivers engage their young people around civic engagement and taking action. So that said, I know we have a couple minutes, and sorry, I feel like I ran through stuff a little bit quick, so there might be some questions. I'll also put my email in the chat right now. So if you have any questions that are lingering or that you want to follow up with me, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and in the last couple minutes, we'll open it up to any questions if any exist. And I'll also drop in those links that I mentioned.
Just want to take a moment and thank Martin for the presentation. Both Martin and Ken are just really terrific partners in this work. And in terms of partnering with SSELA, Generation Citizen is a terrific organization. It's going to be an organization that many districts will begin to take advantage of what they offer, as they think about participating in the Civic Seal and think about either piloting it for the upcoming year or then participating in it after the pilot year. But it's really also helped, and again, talking about partnership, Martin and Ken have been so instrumental in helping SSELA continue to develop its lens around civics. And so many of the themes that will continue to emerge as we begin our revision cycle for K-2 this year will align with those kind of key ideas and core components of action civics, because at the end of the day, the goal here is for us to all work collaboratively together and really get our very young students from the time that they come in and they learn about classroom community, right? We all sit on the carpet squares together in a regular year, and they think about how their actions impact other people. That's the real first moment to kind of touch on that in a school community. And then by the time they walk across the stage, right, for graduation, they could be walking across ready to really go out into the real world and be active participants. So open it up to questions, and Martin, I'll monitor the chat for you and see if there's any questions posed in there, but certainly if anybody wants to unmute themselves and also ask questions, that's fine. Let's see, we've got a few here. All right. So from Tony, it seems from the scoring system devised to achieve the seal of civic literacy, allow students to acquire enough points without taking civic action. What is the rationale? So they can't do that. So the actual state mandate, right? What will happen is it will be rewritten into state law after the Regents approves it, which they should in a number of weeks. But the actual seal and pathway specify that you have to have at least 2 points from each of those buckets. So 2 points have to come from civic knowledge, 2 points have to come from civic participation and action, for a total of 6 points. So a student who may actually get, let's say they get 8 points in civic participation, if they get no points in terms of the knowledge aspect, they would not be eligible for the seal. And again, all of these documents are in draft form. So once the Board of Regents does approve it, districts can expect to see a K-4 guidance document, a 5-8 guidance document, and we'll share that out through the SSELA listserv. And what we will also do is, of course, go back to Martin and Ken and get their thoughts on any changes that might occur last minute. Martin, I'll give this one to you since I answered the last one. Margaret says, can't recall, but does it require middle school and high school participation?
Great question. Yeah, so it doesn't require the middle school participation, but it definitely incentivizes it with the middle school Capstone project. The Capstone project could be done multiple times. So, a middle school student could complete their capstone project once and bring that with them to high school. They could even do it more than once and bring it with them to high school and get 2 points that way, for example. The civic knowledge, that focuses more on the courses on the high school level, both with regents and then the either advanced courses or just the general social studies courses. But they did, yeah, they were very, I think, thinking about how to make sure that middle school is not just included but incentivized in this, to make sure that civic participation and civic experiences don't just begin when you're in high school, but that they're really incorporated, here on the middle school level, but also I think with the eye to thinking about how this could, really be a K-12 mindset.
There's also the added benefit, right? The new US regions, which is the only regions going forward. There will not be a transitional regions at this point, right? It does have the civic literacy essay as the part 3. And so if we can really, again, help students develop that lens where they're examining every issue, every aspect of content as they're moving through K through 12, and they can start to think about where civics as a practice and a standard are within that content, it's really going to help them on that part 3. Because one of the things that I can tell you about the new regions, just like we saw with the global regions, is there is a shift away from description to analysis. And so built into everything that Martin talked about today is that idea of getting young minds to be analytical, to look at what's around them, to think out about what's around them, and then to really connect those dots together, go beyond just reporting that, and thinking about how they can operationalize and create action to bring about resolution. Question again from Margaret. Generation Citizen, are you looking for a K through 5 piece, or will we do this locally with Greg and our SSELA curriculum?
Yeah, good question. I think there's such a need for, for civic, examples in civic action to happen on the elementary K through 5 level. We don't, and can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have that in our plans to kind of expand our curriculum at this moment. But I'm sure that that's a conversation that can continue on the on this SSELA level. Or Ken, do you have any additions?
Yes, and sorry if you can pick up my kids upstairs who appear to be in an argument. Martin's right that right now we don't have any current plans to include younger students in the curriculum. But I think that if this is something that we hear a need for, that's definitely something that we would be interested in thinking about developing programming for in the future. But it would take some time, as you can imagine, because it's a whole different set of standards and scaffolding. I think, definitely the action part of it would be a little bit harder, but I think that certainly at the 5th grade level, the 4th grade level, with really local campaigns, it's possible. So, I encourage you, if this is something that you're interested in, to, engage with us, and you can also contact us directly. I'll drop our names in the chat. I know we're at time, and we can talk further about it.
And going forward, and I don't know if Donna wants to add anything as well, as we begin our revision process, one of the, we are so focused at SSELA in not just telling the story, right? The story is important, content's important, but the practices are what is going to sustain our students throughout their life. And so one of the things we will be looking at is really looking at civics and civic participation and bringing that forward in a lot of our work. And again, that will include conversations with Martin and Ken so that we are aligning our ideas with what they're doing. It's also the idea that as districts really start to embrace the CRS framework, the culturally responsive and sustaining framework, action civics and just participation in society is really one of the ways to mobilize that. And so that's something else that we're going to be looking at going forward as we engage in our revision. And Donna, I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add as well.
I would add that there are some things that have been added in terms of trade book resources that are very appropriate for K2. One that I would think of right off the top of my head is the buddy bench, and looking at bullying and being inclusive and establishing buddy benches in a school, and the videos and things that we have that relate to that also show you how you might engage in that kind of activity. So looking at some of those new trade books that have been added to K-1-2, there may be some things in there that offer suggestions or ideas that could be fleshed out more as we move forward in the revision process.
Those are great points. And also just one other thing to let you guys know. So I just started at Generation Citizen like less than a month ago. And previously I was at the New York State Education Department, where, you know, I was glad that Greg brought up the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. One of the things that the Office of Curriculum and Instruction will be rolling out, I think probably starting at the beginning of the 2021-22 school year, are implementation guides for the framework across different content areas. So those are things that I think we can use as resources in incorporating in our work.
Thank you, Ken. And Tony asked a great question. Does the task force offer opportunities, example lessons for elementary teachers to get involved? So no, not yet. What I can tell you is there will be a general guidance document. Much of it looks at those 4 buckets, that diagram that Martin had shared, the 4 aspects of civics that New York State has defined. But again, what will be happening is that's going to be one of our pushes going forward. We'll be designing lessons that particularly speak to that. And one of the things, again, we're going to be encouraging teachers to do is that many lessons do implicitly imply civics, right? But really shifting that practice to more explicit opportunities. So I used the example before of when students, you know, have a morning meeting, right? And they sit on the carpet, but really taking the opportunity to say, okay, so besides the classroom community we're in now, besides the fact that we're bonding, we have that social emotional learning and connection going on, how does this relate to being a good member? What does a good citizen within our classroom space look like? And that might be as sophisticated as you get at the kindergarten level. Because again, the idea is going to be that this is going to be a building process that by the time we get to 8th grade, hopefully students are able to operationalize it with that first capstone project. And then they can continue that learning. And as Martin said, continue to grow and make that project a high school project and go forward with that as well. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities. This is also a pilot year. And so the one other thing that we have to understand is that much of this is development. The state really wants to look at the best practices that regional providers like BOCES, that regional partners like Generation Citizen can create and work with districts to develop. And then they will curate those resources in the first official year and we'll share those out with districts. So there's the opportunity to be a pilot, to be cutting edge, to grab this from the beginning. And we're going to encourage K-8 that to certainly happen. But there's going to be the opportunity for more supports, more structures, and more materials after that first pilot year as we get into school year 22-23, when this opens up as a full first year initiative. Well, we just want to thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Ken and Martin, for joining us. Thank you, Donna, for joining us as well. It was wonderful to see all of you. Myself and Donna will also just drop our contact information in the chat because we always like to follow up with you. The plan is that for the remainder of this school year, we'll be focusing on different aspects of civics and looking at how civics can be unpacked and how we can prepare for next year. But this was really a terrific way to kick it off with one of our favorite partners. And again, thank you both for being here today and making the time.
Thank you all so much.
All right, folks, you all have a wonderful day and happy spring break for those of you that are coming up on it. So
yes,
be well.
Enjoy. Bye, everyone.
Be well. Bye-bye.